Oi, oi, it's your boy, Slacky J. It's the Jack Slag Boicast, and we're coming at you on either Wednesday or Thursday of this week. Lots of stuff going on this weekend. Quite excited. Going to be talking about bits and bobs from all over the shop, because the UFC is putting on a card. It's not super, but they're competing against, well, you know, they're never actually competing against. But they're up against a lot of other good stuff on this weekend. We've got some good boxing. We've got some good kickboxing. We've got a load of good MMA. And I'm just going to hit some of my favourites and tell you what I'm looking forward to, because I don't have to fill time just talking about this UFC card like a lot of weeks when it's only the UFC on and they're just putting on shite. Let's start with the UFC card, because it's got a light heavyweight headliner. Someone posted, who was it? Hang on, I'll shout them out because they did a good job. Andy Hickey, who you'll know from MMA Twitter, he posted a spreadsheet of the weight class of every main event since 2021, since the start of 2021. Light heavyweight tops the list with 16. Now, anyone who knows anything about MMA, I mean, I presume you, if you're listening to this, probably know that light heavyweight is not where the best fights tend to happen. You tend to get like your 30-second finish or whatever, and then you move on. And then the second most was heavyweight, third most was middleweight. 16 light heavyweight fights, 16 light heavyweight headliners, 15 heavyweight headliners, 12 middleweight headliners. The three worst divisions they've got headlining most of their cards. In the course of that, there's 4 Sean Strickland headliners in that time period. 10 welterweight, 10 lightweight, 10 featherweight, all good classes, slightly underrepresented. I mean, I'd be putting them front and centre all the time. But then bantamweight, 6. Bantamweight is almost everyone in the know's favourite weight class, because it's great. There's always something going on there. And the bantamweight main events that I can remember recently are things like Corey Sandhagen versus Song Yadong, which was banger, or Dom Cruz versus Marlon Vera, banger. Jose Aldo versus Rob Font, banger, you know? Marlon Vera versus Rob Font. So yeah, it's just, all of those fights have been great, and people looked forward to them. I don't know, I mean, I do know what's up. They just like, the heavier fighters are the more important fighters. It's depressing. But we have another middle of the pack light heavyweight division main event. Ryan Superman Spann versus Nikita Hands of Ass Krylov. I was hot on Krylov for a while, especially when he left the UFC. Left the UFC after that fight with Serkinov, when both of them were hot prospects. God, how bad that looks in looking back. But he fought in like Fight Nights Global for a while. Got some easy fights against a washed Manny Newton and a washed Fabio Maldonado. Came back to the UFC, got choked from arm triangle from the bottom of closed guard by Jan Blachowicz. Hilarious. Was sort of hit and miss since then. Probably his worst moment was losing to Paul Craig in 2022 by triangle choke. But then he got that easy fight against Alexander Gustafsson, because that is a freebie for whoever takes it at this point. And then Volkan Oezdemir was the surprise one in his most recent fight in October. The Oezdemir one really did actually impress me, because Oezdemir is pretty good all round. As light heavyweights go, he's pretty skilled. Now, he had his best success by just spazzing out and throwing punches as hard and as fast as possible right off the bat. But he's pretty technically decent all around. And I mean, you saw that against like Paul Craig and people like that. But he started out beating up Nikita Krylov, because Krylov throws a kick. This is the thing. This is what attracted me to Krylov in the first place. He's got this Kyokushin background, or Kyokushin, however you want to say it, where he's got really nice kicks. He's got really good high kicks that he can throw up dozens of in a fight, which of course is rare as rooster's teeth above, well, yeah, even middleweight. But certainly he was fighting up at heavyweight at one point, and he could still kick like that. The problem is, his hands are fucking terrible. And they're not just terrible in when he's throwing his punches, they're loopy and wide and he gets countered very easily, which is true. That was happening all the time against Oezdemir. But if you're a great kicker, you should just be using your hands to frame on the guy or pull him in. You know, you can win kickboxing and Muay Thai matches and even MMA matches on the feet, throwing kicks without throwing punches at all. John Jones has, when he was at his best, was just kicks and frames. And I don't mean you have to push off the guy's eyeballs with your fingers, but framing over the guy's shoulders, framing in his biceps, even framing on his face if you point your fingers out to the side, pulling him in with collar ties. They're There's a lot of stuff you can do to make kicking less disastrous in the aftermath, but Krylov doesn't. Every time he threw a kick in the early going, Volkan Ozdemir would take the kick in the gut and then step in and hit him for free. He's got these great kicks, but his footwork in his boxing, as in the punching, is shit. We're going to get into this later with one of the boxing matches on this weekend. But his boxing, the footwork is shit too. John Jones' boxing, the punching is shit, but his boxing in terms of ring awareness, ring craft, distance management, that's all good. So Krylov's up against Spann, who is, in similar molds to like Jamal Hill, big hitter, decently fast, probably not as fast as Jamal Hill. I've been more impressed with, particularly with Jamal Hill's most recent one. His counter wrestling was really impressive. Ryan Spann obviously recently taken down and choked out by Anthony Smith. Also lost to a rare late career Johnny Walker spaz out. I think that was after Johnny Walker started working with SBGI and became Johnny Faints a Lot Walker. Yes, it was. It's interesting. The only time I really see Ryan Spann nowadays is going back to watch his fight with Nogueira, Rogerio Nogueira, who was old as hell, but still managed to use a really nice deep half entry to get out from under him. I'm such a sucker for deep half because people who use it tend to be losing when they use it. But it's like the epitome of jiu-jitsu because you're extending the guy's leg and turning it into a lever. It's all about levers and body weight and that stuff. It's probably the most neat example of using leverage and off balancing to get out from under someone with not a huge amount of effort compared to what it would be if you were just like trying to turn in on the underhook or whatever. So I'm going to take Spann by knockout because Krylov just leaves himself open for it all the time. But Krylov against Ozdemir was actually able to push through just by shooting sloppy-ass takedowns repeatedly and gutting his way through the finishes. Ozdemir has previously been a decently conditioned fighter with decent technical skills in all areas for a light heavyweight, and he basically gave up underneath the tenacity of Krylov chasing after him. So that's probably more time than that fight deserved, if we're honest.